Hey, this is Brighter Rays, and today we're looking at Genesis chapter 26. At the very end, we've gone through the whole chapter now, and we looked at the fact that God says, "Fear not, for I am with you." So let's finish our study off, and let's conclude with a few thoughts on this passage. All right, first, remember what God says to Isaac. Fear not, for I am with you, right? That's been the title of our series. You got to remember that. Keep that in your brain. Fear not, for I am with you. The command to fear not is repeated by God to numerous people on all kinds of occasions, right? You can't go through the Bible without running into a fear not somewhere. Now, improper fear is an enemy of the Christian. We are to only have one fear. That's it. It's the fear of God. Isaac learns this. It's interesting that God will be known as the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac. A child of God will not be without problems. Though you might be blessed by God, troubles may come upon you. They may even take your life. We must not listen to the world that says that God wants you to be healthy, God wants you to be wealthy, and you should seek those things. Jesus promised persecution for his followers. The Father promised to discipline his dearly loved children as a loving father ought to do. But God tells us not to be afraid of the trials, the disease, the sudden disaster. These cannot touch you unless God wills it. And though these things hurt, they are accompanied with blessings and mercy. George MyIne encourages us by telling us, "Are you not sometimes afraid? And you know not why? Faith fails, and you cannot account for it. The promises pass from your mind, and you cannot recall them. The ground on which you stand seems to sink under your feet. A horror of great darkness has fallen upon you. It is sudden fear. My Christian friend, there is only one remedy for it. You must take it to Jesus. He will soon restore your peace. Courage shall return to your heart, while he says, fear not." So, fear not, for God is with you. That's the reminder. In this world of fear-mongering, in this culture of, this will be your friend when it's advantageous to you, but when it's not, we're going to take everything from you. Fear not, for God is with you. When God is with us, who can stand against us, right? So those are the promises we remember, especially when we're going through, people have experienced a lot of fear since this whole COVID thing started. It exposed people's fears. I think people always had fear. People were afraid of all these different things, but now it's just come to the forefront. Now people are afraid, and they're showing their fear of a lot of different things, which they should not be afraid of. And a lot of this fear doesn't make any sense. If you take a step back and look, it's like, this is insanity. And especially as Christians, what do we have to fear? We fear disease? No, of course not. God is in control of diseases. Do we fear presidents or kings or anybody in charge? Do we fear them? No, we only fear God. We honor them as far as they're honorable. Give honor to whom honor is due. But if they're not honorable, we don't honor them. And if they're not fearing God, then we got a problem. Our job is to fear God. And as we fear God, we need to encourage others to do that. We need to encourage our fellow believers to fear God. And we need to point to the fact that, to the world too, that what you believe is insanity. The only thing that makes sense is to start with God. All your other presuppositions, all of your science and everything else does not make sense unless you begin with God. Otherwise, you are assuming things, thinking you know things that you don't have a clue. And you don't have a clue. You don't have a starting point. You talk to most people who are rational, have thought these things through, and they'll tell you, yeah, I don't have a starting point. I could be wrong about everything. And that's the right answer. That is the right answer. If you don't start with God, who is the anchor point of all knowledge, you could be completely wrong about everything. You have to admit that. You could be living in the Matrix. You could be living, you could be just part of some creature's dream. You could be living in Plato's cave. It's just how it is. So you need to start with God. So our job as Christians, part of our witness to the world, part of holding up and discipling the nations is to hand that out and say, hey, guess what? You know what? You don't have knowledge. You don't have wisdom because you don't have God. You got to fear God first, and then you can have those things. You can go into science and all that kind of stuff will make sense, will make more sense if you start with God. Otherwise, you're cutting yourself off from knowledge, and you're just going with what you can immediately see and perceive, and that is always wrong. That's why science always has to change, because it's always wrong. It's constantly wrong. It's full of errors. Science, it's so funny because the world tells you, oh, you got to go with the science. What's science? It's continually finding out that you're wrong. I mean, you can't look at anything that's coming out of the scientific community and say, okay, well, now we know, oh, now this challenges everything we thought about before. Well, that means that all along you've been wrong. How do we know you're right about this? We don't. Because something else comes along, we're like, oh, now this changes everything. But that's been happening so much recently that how can you understand anything? Right? Like we have this theory of evolution, but we don't even understand physics. We don't understand how things come about. So you understand genetics and how that thing works. But you don't even understand how DNA works. You're studying DNA. You're looking at it like, okay, this gene does this, this, and that. But you don't even know how the thing works. And you think, well, this is how it works. And then, 10 years goes by. It's like, oh, now we got to change our ideas because we learned this. And this radically changes everything. So I could go on forever about this, but remember that knowledge without God doesn't make any sense. There is no knowledge apart from God. It's just grasping at straws. And you're just like, whoa, I got this. Oh, that's wrong. This contradicts that. Oh, well, we'll work on that later. No. Start with God, and everything will fall in place after that. So fear not. Fear not. If you have God, there's no reason to fear. Remember that. As things go crazy, as the world turns against you because it's not advantageous to flatter you, to like you, remember that fear not, for God is with you.